Hiya folks, I wanted to make you guys this video about the origins of racism. A lot of people wonder, like, where does it actually come from? I mean, how did that shit come about? You know what I mean? I'm not going to go all the way back into the millions of years of it, but I'm going to go pretty much. The way I'm going to explain it is pretty solid as far as the time period I'm going to explain it from to now. So, now, I was talking to my friend, and going back and forth on a text like we normally do about a lot of different, topics and subjects. We do that shit all the time, pretty fervently. And so he just texts, so I'm talking about Mithraism, Mithraism. And I'm talking about, the Mithraism is the story of Ra, the sun god. And the next text he sends me, he goes, he spells the word Ra, and then he gives a couple spaces and puts cism. Ra, cism, racism. So, the origins of racism or religion. Now, does that make religion bad? No, it doesn't. What it does, though, is it does make religion a situation where it's superfluous after a while. I mean, it can be superfluous. Now, you can have people, they might need religion forever. Perhaps they do. I mean, it's not up to me to judge whether or not they need it or not. But let's suffice to say that every religion is probably based on something positive. And the positive thing is you want to change something. You want to change something about your own belief structure or your own psyche or your own interaction with the world. And the intent behind religion ultimately, of course, is to make it better off. Now, that better off for you might not mean better off for someone else. You see, that's where religion can become superfluous, because it can get to the point to where, I'm right and you're wrong because you don't have the same exact belief structure that I do. So that brings us to Ra, or Mithraism. Now, Mithraism is, if you listen to, historians or people that are educated, professors or, academics, or, something like that. Those people will probably, most of them will give you Mithraism is, 1800 years old or something like that. Or maybe a little more lenient person might go back to the Egyptian dynasties with it or something like that. And then people who still aren't considered completely out of the mainstream might even say that you could probably trace Mithraism back to 7000 BCE. Okay, that would be your most extreme. But Mithraism is really old. It's a really old satanic construct, and it's an ingenious satanic construct. It's been around for a long time. I mean, well over a couple 100,000 years, at least. I mean, it's been around longer than that, but let's just go with that. And so let's say that, so Mithraism, or the myth of Ra, the sun god, that's what Mithraism means. Mithraism, the term cumulatively means that which binds belief structures. And so you see people always run around talking about, oh, Jesus and Bacchus and Krishna and Dionysus and blah, blah, blah. They're all the same person. And they base that on correlations between astrological and astronomical data. So they say, oh, well, you see, Jesus is, he was born on the 25th of December, and that's the winter equinox, and then he dies on whatever fucking day or whatever, all that kind of shit. So, and then they say, but so did all these other people do the exact same thing according to the folklore. That's Mithraism. That is a belief structure, that is a system of the application of that kind of data that binds real people and events and merges them all into one, or merges them into quote-unquote sameness. Now, if you read Father Malachi Martin's books, you'll see that that is one of the components of demonic possession, is that everything's the same. Everything just blends into the same thing. You know, everything's just, it's all the same. You know, and you hear so many people like they're educated by or indoctrinated or coerced by, you know, the current nihilist point of view that all politicians are the same. They all do the same thing. They all lie. They all this. They're just basically doesn't matter if you vote. You just interchange them, you know, and that's all bullshit. You know, the scientific method is the scientific fucking method. And, you know, if you analyze something, it ain't all the same. All people don't feel the same way in a certain place, and all people don't think the same way about anything. You know, some people do think the same way about stuff, but that's the ultimate goal of the Satanists, is to blend it all into one. Now, the ultimate probably Satanist that people don't realize was a Satanist was this incredible genius motherfucker in the Bible, St. Paul, or Saul, or St. Paul, who was a Satanist. And he was the ultimate Mithraist. And it pretty much was responsible for the current way that the Mithraism, the myth of the sun god, is inculcated into the basic religious belief structure of the five. What we got? Five major religions. Is that, what is that? Let's see. We got Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism. Right. Right. Okay. So you could, if you really did a study, you could link Saul or St. Paul to the current belief structure of every single one of those religions. That's how incredible that motherfucker was. Okay. So, and I'm not sucking his dick or nothing. I'm just saying that's just how smart the motherfucker was. Okay. But he was a Satanist. So, so you got the myth of the sun god. Now what happens is that originally it was a positive thing, because religion, generically, the word religion just means habit, and it's really a psychological construct. Not technically, it's not a spiritual construct. It's just, I mean the spirit is simply the spirit. Religion really has nothing to do with it. Religion is technically psychological, okay, and it's a program. It programs you. And that can be positive or that can be negative. I mean, you can move towards what's positive with anything. You can move towards what's negative. And so religion is just habit, and you're programming. You're using the conscious mind to program the substructure, or to program. Now, you heard that the word was made flesh, and current linguistics states that there are 3 levels to each and every linguistic construct or sentence. Let's say every sentence has 3 levels. You have the basic surface structure, like, you know, what I'm talking about. Then you have the underlying system, the underlying structure of what I'm talking about. And then you have the deep structure. So that correlates to, psychologically, to the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious. Or, yeah, just go with that, okay? So the conscious mind, through repetition, takes in information. And through repetition, it programs the subconscious mind. So that's what you really deeply believe, okay? You can say you believe something on the surface, but then your life takes a totally different turn of events, because underneath it, where the engine really is that runs your life, you believe something else. You see, so that's where religion comes in, and can be so positive, because it can help you through repetition to change your habits, and that's the intent behind religion, is to change your habits towards what's positive. It has nothing to do with worshiping God and all that kind of bullshit. Religion is just designed to change your habits, so that under a situation of dynamic tension, your animal nature doesn't take over. That the force of your spirit, your moral alignment, your reason and your rationality will override the animal nature and the reptilian brainstem, if you will, of psychological need and lust for power and control of other people and everything around you. You know what I mean? But sometimes you'll just relax and let shit go. You know, so that's the actual goal of religion, and you see that in ancient. The perfect example of that is in ancient Egypt with the Mott structure, and the Motts were simply just like Tibetan Buddhism or whatever. They're mantras, or just like prayers in Christian religion. You know, they just, you know, you know the Psalms. You know, you sing those Psalms over and over and over, because you want to program yourself to absorb or to live those positive things. So the way the Satanists were able to corrupt the religious system is they just said, okay, all religions around the world have one intent, basically, and that is to create a situation where people can change their psychological construct through habits. See? So therein comes the magic of the system of Mithraism. So you make up a myth, you make up a story, and you basically tell that same story to everybody. And all of a sudden, all the religions seem the same. When in a way, they do have a common thread, and that common thread is, quote unquote, most of the religions that are on earth today were founded originally by the Golden Rule system, the system of the Golden Rule, which is, you know, you just simply love each other and you treat each other with love and respect, and you don't mistreat each other, and you help each other, and that kind of stuff like that. Those were the habits that religion originally intended to inculcate in people. However, the religious construct through the Satanist system came about by a psychological deficiency of internal anger, perversion, and fragmentation. Like when you hear people say the one God, that's fragmentation. You hear people say God is one, that's wholesome, that's whole, that's holy. But the one God means that I can get this God, I can connect to this God, and I can be right. You know what I'm saying? And so that's where it's so important, the Mithraism, because what happens is that the group that wants to be, that decides it wants to be superior, it gathers multiple people together in a ritual situation, and they all concentrate habitually. There's that word habit. They concentrate habitually to put out this energetic construct that permeates around the world, and that construct is Mithraism, the myth of the sun god Ra. And that, like I said, the best way to, the best time frame to understand that is definitely in ancient Egypt, because that's where people's minds will go to based upon what I'm saying. And that's a good way, because in ancient Egypt they did the same thing. They gave the idea of superiority to the upper classes of people through the priest class, who were the agents of the upper class, and they were the interpretators. They were the interpretation. They gave the interpretations of the Mithra system, the Ra system, and it invariably comes down to measurement. I'm more adept than you. I'm more this than you. I'm more connected than you. I'm better than you because of this. I am greater than you because I am higher on the echelon of the Ra system. You see, and that's the origins of racism. So racism is the origins of racism. You see, now people think that Egypt itself was black, and it wasn't. Egypt itself was white, ran by white people. Now that was from 10,500 BCE or so all the way to now. Doing white people was running that shit. But Egypt is very, very old. It's at least 65,000 years old. It's at least goes back 65,000 BCE, and more than likely to around 240,000 BCE. And that entire period of time, Egypt was ran by the majority of it. The vast bulk of it was ran by people that were non-white. That would be red, black, and brown skin. Red, black, brown, and yellow skinned people, or golden skinned people. That's who ran Egypt. See, so that's very important to understand that 80% of the time that Egypt existed, 90% of the time was ran by, 95% of the time was ran by people who weren't white. The whites only ran it from 10,500 BCE in till now. And the Greeks were so important to the white people because after dynastic Egypt, so-called dynastic Egypt, the Greeks took over the Ra system. That's the system of the myth of Ra, the sun god. And of course, you see, in Greek, all the gods were white. And then the Romans did it. You see, in Rome, all the gods were white. And then later on, down the road, coming forward, after so many other cultures, the Nazis did it. They took the system of Ra, the sun god, and they applied it to the Nordic system. They made up all these gods in the Nordic system, and they were